Today we're going to go over some of our trim work. We're going to talk about casing, which goes around windows and doors. For your project, you're going to build something like this up to size using 2x4s on the flat and a piece of OSB to size. You're just going to fasten it together with some drywall screws in the back. The object is to get it fitting as nice as you can here in these corners and making sure it's flat. So when you move to trim work, there's a big difference between that and framing work. We don't want this all beat up. When you guys do put this together, make sure you have a good edge in here. I'm not so concerned about this edge out here like this is, you wouldn't want that on your inside. We want this looking nice like it was a window casing, okay? And you're gonna run your trim around this for a little bit of practice at that. The way you wanna go about that, first thing, when trim goes on, get a piece of casing here, you don't bring your trim right down flat to the edge of, this would be your edge of your window, or if it was an extension jamb or a jamb on a door, you don't bring that right down to nothing. You leave what's called a reveal there. And can you see how you're showing a little bit of that edge? That's what you want to do, but that has to be consistent all the way around. Is there a set size it should be? I usually keep mine a 1/4 inch, roughly. An easy way to do that, because you have nothing to measure to here, because you're actually going to keep it in. So that means it has to go, your inside point of your 45 has to go here. Easy way to do that is to cut yourself a gauge block, and I have some cut here for you. When you're done with these, I want them back in the can so we're not losing them, so I have to keep making them. But these are roughly a 1/4 inch. Want to start with a good sharp pencil, right? This is trim work. You can't have a square carpenter's pencil. You definitely wouldn't want to use a pen. And you're not making big, long, dark marks, okay? Just light little scratches is all you want to put on there. So you're going to hold that little piece of wood there right flush with this edge and extend it out past the end, and you're just going to make a little short mark there. So you got a little short pencil mark across there where your reveal is. You have to do this going this direction also. So you're going to run that line across there. Now that point where them two lines meet, that's where you want to take your trim to, the inside part of your 45. So you have to do that in every single corner. So you want to get those marks around. Okay. So for this top piece, normally when you're working on a window or a door, you start with your top piece, okay? Then your sides, your bottom goes on last. If it was a window, of course, a door would not have a bottom. But you always start with your top, your header piece, and then move to your sides normally. So you got to take a measurement from this point to this point to get your trim. Now, we've did a lot of framework in here, and we tend to use this end of our tape. And I've talked about this before when we did the toolbox project. Do not use the end of your tape when you're working on trim, okay? You're going to skip to the number 1 and put that on your line and take a measurement, okay? So if I took that measurement across there, holding it at 1, I got 6, and it's about a 32nd. So that's what I'd want to cut. So the actual measurement is 5 and a 32nd, right? But I cut an inch. So we got a couple different types of trim here. This is called teardrop casing. There's a lot of different styles of trim. This is not what we're going to use, but I just want to show that. This is what we're going to be using, and this is a colonial casing. There's also colonial trim, and we'll use that later on when we get to the base trim. But you want to start out, the first thing you want to do is on your saw, on your miter box saw, we got 3 of these new ones. We got that saw, we got one over there, and we got there. I do not want everybody waiting to use a saw. We have plenty of saws. I want them all down here while we're working on that, if that's what we need. I don't want people waiting around for a saw. But this one, they all work about the same. This one you have to push the button in. They do automatically lock on a 45. You could snug this down if you wanted to. It locks there for you, so you probably don't have to. But if you did snug it down, you're gonna have to loosen it up to move it again. Don't try to move it with that locked down. Don't really draw tight on this. Just snug it down, okay? That's really hard on that stuff. So gonna make my 45. Now, when you're cutting with trim, you don't wanna, anytime you don't wanna hack like that, but especially trim. This cut real slow when you cut. So when you're putting trim on, the thin part goes to the inside, okay, with your casing. You don't put the fat part to the inside, okay? So you got one of your 45s on there. Now you're ready to take your measurement. So you're gonna come here. Remember, we cut 1 inch. Now, you guys are working with something really short, but if you're running maybe the window's 8 foot wide, you're working with a 9 foot piece of casing. First thing is you wouldn't want to cut that wrong, because if you cut it too short, then you'd have to get a new piece of trim. Easy way, or what I was shown to do to get these measurements, run your tape longer than your trim, lock it, and then you can slide your trim to the 1 where you had it, and then you would come here and mark the size you needed, what was my number? Anybody remember? Did you write that down? It was 6 and a 32nd, wasn't it?
Yeah, except
okay.
it would have been 5 then.
Right, actual measurement would be 5. But I'm going by that, because if you cut it at 5 and something, it'd be 1 inch short, right? Now, all you're doing is putting a little pencil mark here. Now, that's your short point of your other 45. So what you want to do is get that marked down this edge a little bit right here. Now, when you cut your 45 on here, you should just barely still see that pencil mark down this edge. Do not take a square and try to mark a 45 clean across that top. There's no reason for it. And plus, this is on an angle, so it's probably not even going to be right, okay? How you mark it on there. That's the only thing you need right there. So now you got to switch your saw to the 45 going the other way, because you got to be able to see your cut here. So I'm going to slide this back. Every saw is a little bit different. I'm really used to the saw I use at home, so I can almost just lay it up there and cut it, and I know right where it's going to cut. With this, you're almost better off starting just a little bit long, cut a little bit and see how far you're off, and then move it, okay, if you have to. But you can get right down here. If you get right down here, you can kind of see where that blade is going to cut. So once you have your piece cut, you're going to fasten. You can start fastening this on and then move to your next piece. Holding that up there. Now, when you go to fasten that, I know some of you I've let use the trim guns. We are not using the trim guns for this. Everybody is hand nailing on. A couple different types of nails you're going to use. You can see the trim's thinner here. This normally is nailed on with a 3 or a 4 finish. I have 4 finish nails here, 4D finish nails. That's what you're going to use, okay? And then on the outside, the trim is thicker. So a 4 wouldn't go in there far enough and catch. I do not want anybody using 4s out there, okay? I want you using, what we're going to use is 6s. A lot of times normally you'll use 8s, but we'll use 6s for this. And why I'm saying that is because this is wood, but normally what would this be?
Drywall.
It'd be drywall. So if you're using a 4 out here, and you got a 1/2 inch drywall, that's going into that wood about a 1/4 inch. There's no holding power whatsoever there, okay? That's why you would use an 8. But being this is solid wood, we'll use 6s because it'll be too much to pound in, plus they'd be popping right out the back side if they were 8s or close to it. So we will use 6s for the outside. Now, if you look at a finish nail, they have a little dimple on the top of it. It kind of caves in. That's made so you can keep a punch on it and stay on that nail, okay? But you can't start right out using the punch. You got to use a hammer right on it first. Now, there you go again. This is trim work, so you do not want to hit on this and dent your wood. You're trying to keep your hammer off from it. That's why we're going to use a punch. Now, a lot of you will struggle with this, and this is pine, and it pounds pretty easy, the nails through it. A lot of times you're using oak. In oak, you almost got to pre-drill when you're hand nailing. Because if you don't, it usually splits on you. It splits a lot easier than pine. It's harder, plus the grain in it causes it to split. What I would suggest to you guys is pre-drilling your holes through your trim. It'll make it easier on you. This happens every year. I buy a bunch of little bits, and guy drills one hole, and then he leaves the drill standing up like this, and we experienced this earlier this year, right? Drill gets knocked over, the bit's busted, okay? And I go through 20, 30 bits. I'm not gonna do it. So what am I using here for my drill bit? A finish nail, okay? So we can do this. We can use a finish nail, a 4, for drilling our holes. But you do need to cut the head off. And I just use these cutters on these needle nose pliers to cut that off. But we don't need to everybody cut one. If you save them, if you don't bend it up, then we can, more than one person can use it. As far as where you fasten it at, your nailing pattern should be in between here and here, okay? You shouldn't nail through this rounded part here with your nails. There's certain situations where you have to. Usually how I do a bifold door, it almost forces you to put a nail there. But your nail should be here, and then your other nail, your 6, should be out here between this and this. Kind of reminds me of how we put corner bead on. If you put one on, you put one straight across from it. On this, if you put a nail here, normally you have a 6 straight across from it, okay? Don't be staggering your nails like this. Keep them a pattern, okay? This stuff should be nailed probably about every 16 inches. So basically on this piece, all you're gonna need is 2 nails here and 2 nails here. You do not wanna get your nail close to this 45 or it's gonna split. So stay back in maybe an inch or so from that corner. Don't try to get way out here or you're gonna split it. So I'll go ahead and drill this and fasten this on. And then you don't want to go ahead and drill every hole. Drill a hole and fasten it and then move on to your next hole. So I got a hole started here for this, so it should pound in there fairly easy. So I'm being really careful not to hit my wood or bend the nail. So you get that down there somewhat close before you touch the wood, and then you would move to your nail punch. Now a lot of guys will not finish setting it until they get all their pieces on and then go around and do that right at the end. So we could get this second nail in then. We're going to stay back in here. And kind of watch here that you're not getting your nails right in that crack, because of course there wouldn't be no holding power there. So you want to make sure you're getting into that framing. So get that down close. And also, you don't have to nail this outside quite yet either. You could get it tacked on there like that, get all your pieces on, and then go through and finish nail. So I'd need a measurement here, right? So I'd have to mark this again because all corners have to be marked. And I'm just going to cut one more piece, and then this, you guys will be on your own. So of course, what piece do you think is probably the hardest to get to come together and fit good here? When you think about this, the last one, yes. But if it's supposed to come to this point, and you're leaving it long or short, that's going to make it harder on you, because if you have this side longer and this side shorter, that's going to make where them ain't true 45s anymore. Okay, so that's going to make it harder to come together. So same thing, you're going to get your measurement across here, and then your 45. You get your 45 to fit, fasten it. So that's probably good, right? Okay.